Hello. Now we're going to talk about just a few organs of each of the organ systems that you're responsible for in this week's lab. So when you come to lab, one of the things you'll be doing is you'll be at a station that has got stuff labeled on a plastic three-dimensional model, and you're going to need to find them. And so this is your first overview of exactly the things that you're going to need to be able to find and that you're going to be responsible for remembering when it comes to this week's quiz. Okay, so we're not going to do all of the organ systems now. We're just going to do a few, and we're starting with the respiratory system. The organs of the respiratory system that you need to know about are the lungs. Let me use my laser pointer. Okay, there's the right lung, there's the left lung, and each lung is in a plural space, right? And then the larynx. Some people have trouble with the word larynx. I think even one of our instructors calls it the larynx, but it's the larynx, and it's kind of like, I don't know, have you ever heard of a lynx? It's a really big bobcat, Lynx, lynx, or anyway. The larynx is the proper anatomical term for your voice box, the larynx. Your windpipe here, people call it the windpipe. You won't get any points for calling it the windpipe on a quiz because it is properly known as the trachea. And then at the end here of the trachea, the heart sits right there. So that tube needs to branch and decide, are you going in the right lung or the left lung? And at that point, it is called a bronchus. You'll learn more detail sometime. And then this band of skeletal muscle that separates the lungs and the thoracic cavity from the abdominal pelvic cavity, that band of muscle there, that is known as the diaphragm. Since spelling is difficult for anatomy, I often encourage my students to pronounce the words the way it's easiest for them to remember how to spell them. Because I don't grade you on pronunciation, but I do grade you on spelling. So if trachea is easier for you to remember to spell right, call it the trachea in your head, okay? Diaphragm, so you can remember where that silent G is in the word diaphragm. That's respiratory system, okay? Now, let's see. Boy, there's just nowhere for me to sit, is there? The digestive system, oh, you got to know a lot about that. You've got several salivary glands. I think in this week's lab, you will be looking at the parotid gland that sits right here in front of your ears. And it's the one that you usually feel, if you're about to eat something really sour, you'll usually feel it kind of pinchy sensation. Your esophagus carries food from up here all the way down to your stomach. And your esophagus travels through what part of the thoracic cavity? I'm going to pause here and put a quiz question so you can answer that. Okay, hopefully everyone got that right. And the esophagus delivers food into the stomach. From the stomach, food will go into the small intestine. Small intestine's got a smaller diameter than the next segment called the large intestine. Large intestine's got a bigger diameter. The large intestine is also properly termed the colon. So if you've ever heard of colon cancer, it's cancer of the large intestine. Hanging off of this little part of the large intestine is the appendix. Ever wondered about the appendix? Right there in your lower right abdomen, okay? Hiding behind your stomach, you can't see it on our three-dimensional mannequins unless you pull the stomach out. And our three-dimensional mannequins, you can take them apart and put them back together again. But hiding behind it is the pancreas. The pancreas is very important for digesting your food, but it also is where the body makes insulin. That means the pancreas is part of the digestive system, but also part of the endocrine system, right? Sitting here, also part of the digestive system, technically, but it does much more than that. Whoops. there, is the liver. The liver is a dark reddish brown color, and the liver sits on the right side of the human upper abdominal cavity, where the stomach sits on the upper left side of the human abdominal cavity. That's the liver. And attached to the bottom of the liver is this thing called the gallbladder. And the gallbladder is always a really bright, inky green. So those are a few organs of the digestive system. What do we have next? Muscles. Someday you will learn a lot of muscles, but not today. Today we're just going to ask you to learn a few muscles. Here's a picture of someone from the front. That means this is an anterior view, right? We're looking from the anterior part. We're looking at the anterior part of the body. And what do we need to know? On the front of the arm is the biceps brachii. Now, I pronounce it brachii because that helps me spell it right. I believe its scientific pronunciation is something like brachii. I don't say it that way, and I apologize, okay? But that is this muscle right here on the front of your arm, okay? The major muscles of your chest, the big ones, are the pectoralis major. I would like you to notice that the biceps brachii and the pectoralis major, they've got two words to their name, kind of like a first name and a last name. And that's because there also is a biceps muscle in the leg called the biceps femoris. And there also is a small pectoralis muscle called the pectoralis minor. So you will only get half credit for just writing biceps or just writing pectoralis because they've got two names, pectoralis major, biceps brachii. Now, we want you to know something about the leg, but there's so many muscles in the leg. We don't hold you responsible for all of them. So we're asking you to learn a couple of muscle groups. The front, the anterior aspect of your thigh, is a group of muscles called the quadriceps group. All right? Before we leave this slide, I wanted to read this. We say a muscle flexes a joint when contraction of that muscle causes that joint to bend. Alrighty? So when this biceps brachii contracts, it bends my elbow. Therefore, it is correct to say that the biceps brachii muscle does what? Does it flex the elbow or does it extend the elbow? Right? I'm going to let you answer that question right now. Okay. Now, when a muscle extends a joint, straightens it out, we say that a muscle extends a joint when it straightens it out. So let's look at the quadriceps group, the front of your thigh. When the front of your thigh contracts, go ahead, contract the front of your thigh. What happens to your knee? Does it straighten out? If it straightens out, then is that called flexing or extending? So is it correct to say the quadriceps group flexes the knee or the quadriceps group extends the knee? I'm going to let you answer that now. All right. Now, this is the posterior aspect of all of these skeletal muscles, right? And here are three more muscles we want you to know. Here you can see on the back of the upper arm, we've got a muscle called the triceps brachii. Triceps means three heads, for those of you who are Latin geeks, and the triceps brachii muscle does have three heads or three insertions. So triceps brachii. When the triceps muscle contracts, it extends the elbow. So it straightens the elbow. The gluteus maximus, first muscle name most children learn. Is it just me? Because, you weren't allowed to say butt when you were a kid. I don't know. Maybe you were. We were not allowed to say butt, but we were allowed to say gluteus maximus. So we all learned it very quickly. So gluteus maximus. And then this group on the posterior aspect of the thigh is known as the hamstrings group. And when the hamstrings group contracts, it is going to flex the knee because of the rules of bending the knee means flexing the knee. And the hamstrings does that. Ready? Let's see. Organs in the skeletal system. Okay, the mandible is the medical term for your jaw. Oh, that's not labeled here. But this guy right there, that is the mandible. Remind me to put that in. Okay. The humerus. The humerus is your upper arm bone. Have you ever heard of hitting your funny bone? You know, the word funny is the same as the word humerus. So if you hit, it's actually your humeral nerve, then it hurts. Anyway, your forearm has got two bones in it. One is called the radius, one is called the ulna. Your ulna, this is part of your ulna. So when you rest your elbow on the table, you are touching part of your ulna to the table. When you rest your elbow on the table, the radius does not touch the table. The radius stops right there. But in your forearm, radius and ulna, your wrist bones have got a name. They are called carpals or carpal bones. Those are your wrist bones. What you might call your breastbone right here, its anatomical term is the sternum. The sternum. Your thigh bone, its proper name is the femur. Your shin bone, its proper name is the tibia. You actually have two bones down there. We'll get to them when we get to the skeleton. The bones of your back, each one of these, 1, 2, 3, 4, each one of those is called a vertebra. Vertebrae is plural. You know, it's Latin, so you don't say vertebras, you say vertebrae. Latin, okay? And your shoulder blade, you see this bone here that looks like a wing? You got one for each shoulder, right? Your shoulder blade is properly known as the scapula. All right, those are the bones you need to make sure you know for this week's lab and for this week's quiz. The urinary system, easy peasy. For one thing, they went ahead and named kidneys kidneys. And you know they could have come up with a fancier name for it, right? But they didn't. You've got two kidneys, each one about the size of a bar of soap. Left kidney, right kidney. All right? Now your kidneys, they actually make the urine. And once the urine has been made, it goes down a little tube and gets stored in a sac called the urinary bladder. By the way, if you call the urinary bladder just the bladder, you only get half credit for that. Why? Because there is a urinary bladder, but there's also a gallbladder. Don't forget the gallbladder, right? So you only get half credit for calling that the bladder. It is the urinary bladder. So the urinary bladder. So carrying urine from the left kidney down to the urinary bladder is the left ureter. And from the right kidney to the urinary bladder, the right ureter. Now, urethra is what carries the urine to the outside world. Ureter, different tube, different name. That's a urinary system. Reproductive system. Here's the female reproductive system. All you need to know for this week's lab is ovaries. Females have got two ovaries, generally speaking. One uterus, and the tube that connects the uterus to the outside world for sperm going in or for babies coming out is known as the vagina. And remember, the vagina is one of those things in the pelvic cavity. Okay. Male reproductive system. Again, you only need to know a few things. The testes, they sit here in this pouch of skin and they make the sperm. This is the penis that its job is to deliver those gametes into the vagina. And this thing right here is the prostate gland. And I need to apologize for this because the picture of the prostate gland, they make the prostate gland yellow. But in your model that you're looking at today, the prostate gland is like a dark purpley red. So don't think about the color. The prostate gland is round, it's dark purpley red, and it sits immediately inferior to the urinary bladder, only in men, and it is in the pelvic cavity. Okay? The cardiovascular system. The cardiovascular system, you need to know the heart. And again, yay that they didn't rename the heart. Okay? The heart sits right behind the sternum. It just peeks out on the left side a little bit more, but the sternum protects the heart. And then the two major blood vessels you need to know are the biggest artery in the body, the aorta, that's the biggest artery in the body, and the biggest vein in the body, the vena cava. And the artery, the aorta, starts here at the heart, and there's a part of it that's here in the thorax, which is called the thoracic aorta, but it keeps on going down into the abdominal cavity, and that part's called the abdominal aorta. So the aorta is found in the thoracic cavity and in the abdominal cavity. Okay? The vena cava. The vena cava is the biggest vein in the body. It's bringing blood back to the heart. And the inferior vena cava is called inferior because it's below the heart. The inferior vena cava is bringing blood up from the legs. And the superior vena cava is called superior because it's above the heart. The superior vena cava is bringing blood down from the head and also from the arms to the heart. Okay? The nervous system. Again, aren't you glad they didn't name the brain something different, right? The brain and this thing, the spinal cord that is protected by your vertebrae, the brain and the spinal cord, they are the central nervous system. And then coming out from the spine are these big bundles of hundreds of thousands of neurons. And those bundles of neurons are like bundles of electrical wires, and they are called spinal nerves. Okay. Oh, that's it. All righty. Get all this stuff done, and I will see you in lab this week.